Okay, good day everyone. We are the group 5 and today we're going to discuss the book analysis of El Filibusterismo to our concept map.
The outline of the presentation will follow the sequence. Book information, history summary, themes and symbolism, evaluation, critical analysis, reflection, and conclusion. And without further ado, let's begin. Starting with the book information, El Filibusterismo is the second written novel by Jose Rizal, serving as the sequel to No Limit Tangere. Like its predecessor, it was written in Spanish and it is known in English as The Reign of Greed. The novel consists of 38 chapters and was dedicated to the three martyred prince, priests of the Cavite Mutiny, whose execution significantly influenced the themes and titles of the work. Rizal had to explain the term filibusterismo to his German friend Ferdinand Blumentritt, as it was not widely known in the Philippines at the time. In a letter, Rizal recalled hearing the word for the first time in 1872 during the tragic executions and described the fear it caused, noting that this father forbade its use its use along with names like Cavite and Burgos, as the word filibusterismo meant as a patriot who was usually associated with the revolutionary activities. The Spaniards and Manila newspapers used the term to label anyone suspected of revolutionary activity, highlighting the novel's focus on oppression and social injustice. Moving on to the history, um, Jose Rizal took 3 years to write his second novel, El Filibusterismo, which he began in October 1888 while in Calamba. He continued revising it in London in 1888 and worked further on the manuscript in Paris. Seeking a quieter and cheaper place to live, he moved to Brussels to focus on finishing the book. Rizal completed the novel on March 29, 1891 in Biarritz, and it was published on September 18, 1891. In Ghent, with financial help from his friend Valentin Ventura. Out of gratitude, Rizal donated the original manuscript and a signed printed copy to Ventura, and sent complimentary copies to several friends, including Blumentritt, Ponce, Lopez, Lopez Haina, Antonio Luna, and others. Later, El Nuevo Regimen, a liberal Madrid newspaper, serial serialized the novel in October 1891. Today, the original manuscript consisting of 279 pages is preserved in the Filipiniana Division of Bureau of Public Libraries in Manila after being acquired from Ventura for 10,000 pesos.
So, moving on to the summary, it is divided into 7 parts. The first one is exposition, followed by the rising action, climax, falling action, and conclusion. It is then added by the main characters and the settings of the story. So, starting with the exposition, the story in El Filibusterismo revolves around its main character, Simon, who is an affluent jeweler. Simon is actually Crisostomo Ibarra of the Nolimi Tangere, whom everyone thought had been killed by the Guardia Civil at Laguna de Bay. He had escaped and fled to Cuba. He became wealthy and made connections with influential Spanish officials. Upon his return to the Philippines after many years, he became very influential as the Governor General, who owes so much to him, consults him in making decisions. In reality, however, everything Simon does is just a part of his grand plan to take revenge against the Spanish officials and to rescue Maria Clara from the convent. Planning to stage a revolution, he smuggles arms and looks for followers, mainly from the exploited and abused natives. Moving on to the rising action, one of his recruits is Basilio, the son of Sisa, who with Captain Tiago's help was able to study in Manila. Simon also makes an alliance with the revolutionary group of Cabezang Tales, a former cabeza de barangay who suffered maltreatments from the hands of the friars. Using his influence, Simon encourages corruption, decadence, and more oppressive government policies so that the citizens become more infuriated. However, one night, the planned revolt was not carried out because of Simon. Upon hearing that Maria Clara died in the nunnery, decided not to give the signal for the outbreak of the uprising. Another plan was made some months later at the venue of the wedding reception of Juanito Pelaez and Paulita Gomez. Simon planted many explosives enough to kill the invited guests, primarily the friars and the government officials. According to the plot, the big explosion shall be started by the gift he would give to the newlyweds at the reception, a kerosene lamp with an explosive. When the lamp flickers and someone turns the wick, it will result in a big explosion that will become a signal to the revolutionary troops to simultaneously attack the government buildings in Manila. Moving on to the climax, during the reception, Simon gives his gifts to the newlyweds. Before, before hurriedly leaving the venue, he receives a piece of mysterious paper bearing the message, "You will die tonight," signed by Juan Crisostomo Ibarra. Meanwhile, Isagani, the rejected lover of Paulita, is standing outside the reception. His friend Basilio tells him to leave the place because the lamp will soon blow up. When Father Salvi identifies the handwriting in the note and confirms that it was indeed Ibarra's, the guests begin to panic. When the lamp flickers, Father Irene tries to turn the wick up. But Isagani, wanting to save Paulita's life, rushes into the house, grabs the lamp, and throws it into the river where it explodes. Simon's revolutionary plot was discovered and he's hunted by the Guardia Civil. He managed to escape but was seriously wounded. Carrying his jewelry chest, he finds shelter in the home of Padre Florentino. Learning of his presence in the house of the priest, the lieutenant of Guardia Civil informs Padre Florentino that he will come in the evening to arrest Simon. So, moving on to the following action, Simon then takes poison so that he won't be caught alive. As the poison's effects start to take toll on his body, he confesses to Florentino his true identity and his plan of revenge through bloody revolution. After the emotional and agonizing confession of the dying man, the priest absolves the dying man from his sins, saying, "God will forgive you, Senor Simon. He knows that we are fallible. He has seen that you have suffered. He has frustrated your plans one by one, first by the death of Maria Clara, then by a lack of preparation, then in some mysterious way. Let us bow to his will and render him thanks." So lastly, falling onto the conclusion, the story ends with the priest throwing Simon's treasures into the sea so that they would not be used by the greedy. The priest hopes that when the right time comes, they will be recovered and used only for good. So, moving on to the main characters and key features of the narrative, starting with Simon, as he is the main character, who is actually Crisostomo Ibarra from the first novel, No Limitang in disguise. After everything he went through, he is now back as a rich jeweler with a plan to start a revolution against the Spanish government. He pretends to be friends with the important people to manipulate them and get his revenge. Next is Basilio, a medical student who used to be poor. He's planning to marry Julie and wants to live a simple life as a doctor. Simon tries to get him to join the revolution, but Basilio refuses at first. However, after some bad things happen to him and Julie, he decides to join Simon. Next is Isagami. He is a poet and Basilio's best friend. He is in love with his country and wants to make things better. He's known for being idealistic and speaks his mind, which someone gets him in trouble. He was Paulitas Gomez's boyfriend. Next is Cabezang Palace, a former head of his town who becomes an outlaw. He represents the farmers who lost their land to the friars. He is angry and wants to fight back against those who wronged him. Next one is Julie, Thales' daughter, and Basilio's girlfriend. She dreams of getting an education, but her family loses everything. She kills herself after an attempted rape by one of the friars. Next is Padre Florentino, a Filipino priest and Isagani's godfather. He is a moral and religious leader. At the end of the novel, Simon seeks refuge in his house. And lastly, Paulita Gomez, which is Isagani's girlfriend, who is known for her beauty. She cares a lot about her social status and ends up leaving Isagani for a wealthier man. And lastly, let's move on to the settings. The main settings of Filibusterismo play a key role in reflecting the social and political issues of the time. Manila, the capital, serves as the center of the novel's action, where most social gatherings and the climax of Simon's plot take place. The story begins on the steamship Tabo, which travels along the Pasig River and introduces characters from different social classes. The upper deck for the Spanish elite and the lower deck for the native Filipinos. Binondo, the Chinese district of Manila, is home to Capitan Tiago, Basilio, and the sickly Ibarra, highlighting the blend of cultures and social hierarchies. San Diego, Basilio's hometown, is important for key encounters and the grave of his mother, Sisa. Los Baños serves as the setting of Captain General's hunting excursion and card games, where Simon subtly influences political decisions. Finally, Yani, also called as Barrio Sagpang, shows the suffering of Cabezang Palace and his family under prior abuse, leading him to join Simon's plans against the authorities.
Okay. Let's now move on to the next part of the analysis, wherein we'll discuss the themes, symbolism, author's purpose, style, and purpose and style of the book. Okay. Starting with themes. The central theme of El Filibusterismo is the search for the ideal means of achieving social reform. Jose Rizal explores how true change should be pursued not through hatred or vengeance, but through enlightenment and moral strength. One of the major sub-themes is corruption and oppression, where Rizal exposes the deep moral decay within the Spanish colonial government, and the abuse committed by Spanish officials who exploited the Filipino people. Another key theme is education and enlightenment, as the novel presents education as a vital path to freedom and empowerment. The students' fight for a Spanish language academy symbolizes the Filipino youth's desire for equality, intellectual growth, and national identity. Closely tied to this is the struggle for freedom and national identity, reflecting the people's awakening to their rights and their determination to build a nation independent from a colonial rule. The theme of revenge is embodied in Simon, who returns as a wealthy jeweler seeking to avenge the injustices he suffered as Crisostomo Ibarra. Finally, the novel contrasts violence and reform, questioning whether violent revolution can truly lead to justice or bring more suffering. Through these interconnected themes, Rizal emphasizes that meaningful reform comes not from destruction but from enlightenment, unity, and moral courage. The shift to a darker tone. El Filibusterismo is much darker and more intense than Noli Me Tangere. While the first novel focused on love, hope, and awakening, the El Filibusterismo dives into themes of anger, revenge, and despair. It contains scenes of murder, abuse, and even suicide, showing the painful reality of life under Spanish rule. The story marks a huge turning point for the main character. The once idealistic and kind Crisostomo Ibarra transforms into Simon, a vengeful and cunning man determined to destroy the corrupt system through violence. However, Rizal uses this transformation to send a powerful message. When Simon's plan to blow up Capitan Tiago's house and kill all the Spanish officials, he seeks comfort from Padre Florentino, who reminds him that true justice cannot come from hatred or bloodshed. Through this, Rizal teaches that violence is never the answer, and that lasting reform must come from justice, wisdom, and moral integrity, not revenge. Moving on, Noli Me Tangere versus El Filibusterismo. Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo differ significantly in tone and purpose. Noli Me Tangere is a romantic novel, a book of the heart and a book of a feeling, filled with freshness and hope. In contrast, the El Filibusterismo is a political novel, a work of the head and a book of thought. It conveys bitterness, humor, hatred, pain, and violence, intelligence and sorrow, reflecting a darker and more serious exploration of society and the consequences of oppression. Next, the symbolism. In El Filibusterismo, Rizal uses characters and symbols to reflect the struggles of Filipino society under Spanish rule. Simon embodies the frustration and desperation of the oppressed, showing how injustice can push someone toward revenge and radical action. Through his violent path, ultimately fails. The pomegranate-shaped lamp, which secretly holds a bomb, symbolizes the simmering social tensions and inequalities that threaten to explode at any moment. The Spanish Language Academy represents the students' fight for political inclusion and a shared national identity reflecting their desire for equality and recognition. Meanwhile, the Vapor Tabo, a steamship journey down the Pasig River, serves as a microcosm of society where characters from different classes and backgrounds interact, highlighting the divisions and conflicts within the colony. Through these symbols, Rizal portrays both the oppression and the aspirations of the Filipino people, emphasizing the need for justice, unity, and moral reform.
Moving on to the purpose and style, starting with the purpose. One of Jose Rizal's main purpose in writing El Filibusterismo was to awaken the Filipino consciousness, encouraging his countrymen to recognize the severity of their oppression and the urgent need for social change. He sought to expose the abuses and corruption of Spanish officials and friars, continuing the critique he began in Noli Me Tangere Unlike his first novel, El Filibusterismo carries a more revolutionary and angry tone, advocating for a direct action and even potentially violent reform, reflecting Rizal's growing disillusionment with peaceful solutions. Additionally, the novel serves to memorialize the Gumburza priests who were unjustly executed, making their sacrifice a symbol for a broader struggle against injustice and inspiring Filipinos to fight for their rights. Next is the style. El Filibusterismo adopts a much darker and more tragic tone compared to No Limit Tangere, reflecting the consequences of failed reforms and potential for revolution. Rizal uses symbolism throughout the novel, most notably in the transformation of Crisostomo Ibarra into the vengeful Simon, to express his own anger and frustration at the injustices he witnessed. The narrative is also intensely personal, incorporating Rizal's own experiences and losses to add emotional depth and authenticity. Beyond storytelling, the novel this the novel serves as a direct and bold call to action, using a more aggressive and assertive style than his first work to inspire Filipinos to recognize oppression and seek meaningful change.
Last but not least, I will discuss our group's evaluation, observations, and personal insights about the book, starting with the evaluation and critical analysis. For our critical analysis of the book, plot-wise, it is a good transition from a go-lucky theme to a darker and more serious look on what lies beneath the surface. The novel focuses more on action and movement rather than just words or letters. It follows the principle that if someone throws a rock at you, you throw an even bigger one in return. Simon embodies this idea when he plots to plant an explosive to kill the rich and the powerful. But his plan ultimately fails, all because of Isagani. Despite being left by Paulita for a wealthy man, Isagani still chooses to save her life by throwing the explosive lamp into the river, even if it means sacrificing Simon's revolution. His act shows that love and compassion can still exist even in the times of anger and despair. Despite how intelligent and educated Simon was, he allowed his resentment to consume him. He became the embodiment of a man who was pushed to the edge by injustice and oppression. Rizal shows that when the oppressed cry out, they are often ignored because the powerful will never willingly give up their control. In the end, justice was never achieved. Simon dies in despair while corrupt figures like Padre Salvi and others continue to thrive and do evil. We actually appreciate how the story ended, as it mirrors the reality of our own Philippine society. No matter how much you fight for what is right, evil will always seem to find a way to twist things in a favor. The corruption, greed, and hunger for power portrayed the novel remain visible even today. Yet, the story also gives a sense of hope. No matter how bad things get, change is still possible through awareness, education, and collective action. Education is not just about memorizing facts, but understanding what's really happening in society. So we can spark the change for the better. Good will always exist. If there's bad, good will rise up against it. It only takes a small little flame to start a fire. Moving on to the personal reflection and insights of our group, Simone's story is something many of us can relate to, not because we've lived through his exact pain, but because we all know what it feels like to be betrayed, pushed aside, or treated unfairly, despite having good intentions. Let's say we were in his situation, where everything had been taken away from him in the first book: his lover, his father, his dignity, and almost his life. Yet he was given the chance to survive and seek revenge. What would you choose? Of course, with all the frustration and anger built up inside, it would seem that violence is the only option. He did not choose peaceful reform like he had advocated as a younger Crisostomo Ibarra. He had already tried that, and in return, he faced unjust persecution by the Spanish government, which even targeted those dear to him just to break him. Sounds familiar, right? It's similar to what happened in real history. When Jose Rizal pushed for peaceful reforms to gain independence from the Spaniards, compared to the revolution led by Andres Bonifacio. Looking at the results, Rizal's approach had a long-lasting impact. It reached generations of readers and still influences us today. On the other hand, Bonifacio's revolution was meaningful, but it was a lose-lose situation because Filipino lives were lost and even as some Spanish soldiers were killed. The story also highlights how the problems of the past can still be the problems of the present. Corruption, greed, and the killings show just how far some Filipinos will go to gain power. It proves that we are not so different from the Spaniards during the colonial times. We are just repeating the same mistakes that they made. This is why education is so important. Nowadays, many see education merely as a way to succeed in life, but its value goes far beyond that. We don't go to school just to memorize facts or get high grades. We learn valuable lessons that guide us to do good and understand what is right. Education is our main weapon to fight evil and its corrupt ways. And lastly, to sum it up, is the conclusion. Rizal's novel El Filibusterismo is not just a continuation of his Noli Me Tangere. It is also a warning, a message to us that no matter how dire circumstances may become, justice should never be sought through shedding blood. Everyone deserves the chance to reflect on their mistakes and face the consequences. But violence is not the solution. The plot reflects the reality of our society. If we fail to correct our wrongs and only treat the symptoms, the problems will only worsen over time. It is fascinating how Rizal, like a skilled doctor, was able to diagnose the sickness of a nation, a sickness that, in many ways, persists even today. He reminds us that fighting for the Philippines is meaningless if we do not first understand what we are fighting for. What is the point of struggle when we remain divided by provinces and not united as one nation? The moral story is that true reform and progress come through unity, education, and moral courage, not violence or revenge. And that concludes our presentation. We hope you gain not just knowledge, but insight that the struggles, lessons, and sacrifices in Rizal's works remind us that change starts with understanding, courage, and unity. Let us carry these lessons forward and strive to build a better future. Thanks all. Thank you.